I'm delighted to bring onto the stage Megan Snethlage, who's VP of Business Development for VEERUM. She's extremely articulate and energetic, and she's going to be doing a fantastic presentation for us to start the afternoon. So round of applause, please, for Megan. Thank you.
Watch after that lovely introduction. I'm going to be fumbling over my words, but we'll blame it on the jet lag. But thanks, Adam. All right. Hope everybody's full and enjoyed their beautiful lunch and feeling energized. So as Adam mentioned, I'm Megan Snethlage. I'm Vice President of Business Development at a company called VEERUM, where we are scaling digital visual operations to oil and gas operators around the world. And what that means is we take the physical asset and tie it into data systems, data ops, and engineering drawings and models in one unified environment to enable and unlock operational and project use cases around the world. So that's really what our mission is. And a little bit about myself. So my educational background is in neuroscience and psychology. And as is expected with many people of that vocation, after getting my BSc from a small university in Canada, I promptly started my business development career in oil and gas services, software, and products. So I've been with VEERUM for about 5 years now, and currently I'm looking after our revenue operations for our existing install, our new growth, as well as our partner and channel alliances. So today what I want to talk about is we've had a lot of fantastic discussions up until this point about AI strategies. Obviously that's the theme, the big theme that we're all looking forward to. And what I want to talk about is how critical operational and spatial context is to deploying AI strategies and making it really impactful and valuable across the value chain. As we're looking to tier ones across the industry, especially over the last year or two, we've seen a lot of similarities and consistencies in corporate mission statements. We see, reducing operating costs. We see eliminating risk of knowledge transfer. We see, removing safety hazards, getting people off of the plant, operating by exception, and obviously increasing our productivity. So these themes we're seeing consistently across the board, and I think I can confidently speak for most of us that we likely haven't seen this level of investment that we're seeing today in technology. And it's really becoming pivotal on how, where, and when we're applying these technologies. So if you look at what we've accomplished, I would say as an industry, we've turned our documents into data. We've deployed enterprise data systems. We've deployed cloud platforms. We've brought sensor data into a data thread. And we've started to visualize and capture our facilities and bring this all together. So I'd say when we're talking about AI strategies and how this is all coming together, this is less about digitizing our data and more about digitizing understanding and context of our facilities. So that's what I want to talk about today. All right, so as mentioned, if we look at our tier 1, tier 2 oil and gas operators, everybody typically has most of what you see on the left-hand side. So we've, standardized our documentation, we've put it on the cloud, we've made it accessible, we're deploying asset registries, we are, enabling our engineering repositories, we're capturing that physical representation of site and tying it into a data strategy. But despite all of that, we still see a lot of challenges with, productivity gaps and lags in what we're actually doing at the plant. So despite all of these investments that we're making data accessible, we don't need to be capturing more data or making it more accessible, but we need to be making it more intelligent and available to use in operational context. So when you ask an operator on site to do a task or address a work order or a work notification, they're still spending minutes, sometimes even hours, trying to make sense of the relationships between what's on site and what different systems of data are available to them. We see, okay, there's a piece of equipment, but how do I understand what's in the context of that equipment? Are there, hazards? Are there permits? Those kind of things that are still really going unanswered in a lot of cases, despite the leaps and bounds that we're, making in terms of digitalization. So this is an industrial intelligence pyramid, or I like to call it a digital maturity or adoption pyramid. Now, this isn't compounding value. I'd say the value is probably the highest at the top. And when we follow the investment over the last 5 to 10 years in the industry, we've largely started, as I mentioned, on the bottom. So turning that data into documents, making sense of all that information, and making it accessible. Then starting to connect our systems and creating those digital threads and data fabrics. And that's where we start to see things like knowledge graphs or plant graphs, and really making sure that those systems of data begin to speak to each other. Then what we have there in the green box is really the operational and spatial context piece, which is a really critical component as you're starting to build up these layers through to moving towards the top of the pyramid, which is where we're all starting to invest in, is our AI strategies. So the industry as a whole is trying to move forward to autonomous operations, which is ultimately kind of the North Star, where you're completely operating by exception. You know, these plants are running more or less on their own without that human intervention, which is scary for us to think about today. But if you think about us trying to move in that direction, even to get to that level 4, really the most critical context that we need to enable is what's happening spatially, connecting the physical asset to our data enterprise systems, to our processes, and to our people. So yeah, I think that if we breeze by or brush over what's in that green box, we run the risk of our AI strategies not reliably being able to reason, recommend, or act long term. So why does this spatial or operational context matter? So I laugh at the word. I think it says on there traditional enterprise software. I know it's not old enough to be traditional, but some of the enterprise AI software that we're seeing today can, you know, fairly confidently depict or determine what an asset ID is. But at this day and age, sorry, I'm a pacer, so I typically pace. But in this day and age, when we're looking at industrial operations, digitalization, and some of these AI strategies on our data, we actually need to go a lot further, because just looking at an asset ID in isolation is not enough to make confident, analysis or actions off of what we're seeing. So if you look at an asset, we actually need to know a little bit more. You know, where is it located? What's it related to? Are there any shutdowns or anything that needs to go offline in order to do work on that piece of equipment? Can you physically isolate it? Can you get equipment in there to access it? All of these different questions that an SME or an operator on site would, pretty intuitively be able to answer. But we have to consider those type of conversations as well when we're looking at long-term AI strategies, especially when we're trying to achieve operational outcomes. That's, specifically where digital twins become important, again, is tying the physical asset to the data relationships. And so again, if we take this even a step further and we think about, okay, there's a technician on the plant who receives a work notification, and they say, okay, I need to, replace this pump. They're going to have to go through, either log into their digital twin or go through their traditional processes of connecting different data systems that are in isolation, going through and starting to piece that together and understand the relationships between what that single work notification means and all of the pieces of context that come into play in order to do that. So without that context, whether you're looking at a technician on the plant or who's remotely planning, or an AI system that you're trying to enable to do more autonomous activities on your data, you still have to account for all of that spatial and operational context that is traditionally locked in your systems or in an SME's kind of brain. And that's really the bridge that we have to gap, and why the digital twin piece becomes so critical to maturing and expanding these strategies. So I think largely we're likely of the opinion that operators are not going to become more autonomous by enabling more autonomous software. It's really about de-risking and reducing uncertainty across the value chain. So when we look at, again, this is another depiction of that pyramid that I had, we need to go through progressively each stage and determine where can we eliminate or reduce uncertainty on our data. So starting with visualization, seeing our assets, seeing our data, then into connectivity, bringing those systems all together and unlocking that data thread. Then you get into the operationalizing piece and into your level 4 and level 5, which is ultimately going to be your autonomous operation model, which we expect in the next 5 to 10 years in a perfect world. But without operational or spatial context, you're really going to be trapped beyond moving from the level 3, level 4, level 5. So without that piece of it, AI becomes interesting. But when you add operational information, context, and spatial intelligence, that's where it really becomes an operating model, something that you can use to enable some of those processes a lot faster. So that's why it's critical. And I don't want to make a blanket statement and say, yeah, digital twins or geospatial data or operational context is critical or required for all of our AI strategies. That's certainly not the case. But for the ones that are critical in terms of operating a facility, this is a pretty big piece of it. So I don't believe the question is, is AI going to change our operations? I think we're all here because we largely agree. I appreciate this morning Achilles mentioned that he's skeptical of AI, and I think that's, transferable with responsible. I think we should all be skeptical or somewhat responsible with the way that we're deploying these strategies, especially when we're applying it to the way we're running our facilities, because obviously there's inherent risk if you have any missteps. As we're learning, we certainly need to be doing it cautiously and progressively. But yeah, I don't think the question is anymore, is it going to transform our operations? It already is transforming our operations. I think the question that we're beginning to answer now is how well can it understand the way we're operating our facilities in order to be that much more valuable and autonomous in the future. So this is, just some thoughts around spatial context and operational context and how to apply it to, operating models. And yeah, looking forward to further conversations this afternoon. But if anybody has any questions, be happy to take them.
If you want to ask Megan one question before we go to the next one, I'm more than happy to do that.
Oh, good.
I know everyone's very shy today. No problem. Megan's going to be here anyway, so they've got to stand in the back. Big round of applause.
Thanks, team. Thanks.